order the November 17th, 2021 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Brenda, would you please do a roll call?
Yes. Brandon D.
Here.
Brenda G.
Present.
Melissa P.
Absent.
Not present. Okay. Patricia LaRue.
Here.
Sean Downing.
Here.
Matt J.
Here.
Okay, next this is so hard to talk through a mask. Approval of the meeting minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, having heard none, do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Are there any public comment? Public comments? Oh, all those in favor, I'm sorry. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Okay, sorry about that. It's been a while since we've had is there any public comments? Okay, so then the first action item is discussion on the comprehensive plan, bike and pedestrian, and park and recreation plan. And we'll be hearing from Stephanie Falkers of SRF Consulting.
I'll just jump in quick first.
Oh.
I haven't talked to you guys in a little bit, so I just wanted to provide an update on the process before Stephanie gets rolling. I won't steal too much of her thunder, but we did, when we were going through the request for proposals process, we received 9 proposals for this planning process that we're going to be heading into. We selected 2 firms to interview. Both Council and Plan Commission interviewed those 2 firms, and through that process we chose SRF Consulting in conjunction with Alta, which will be the lead on the bicycle and pedestrian plan. So that's the consultant we've got in place. We've been working through contracts since that time, getting those in place, getting kind of the background and the foundation set up. On November 5th, we did have an internal staff kickoff for these processes. Stephanie will go through some of the details of what we covered in that process as well. It'll be sort of similar to what we do tonight. So this is the first steering committee kickoff for the outdoor rec plan. December 7th, I think, is our Plan Commission kickoff for the comprehensive plan, and then we will also kick off the bike ped plan steering committee in December as well. If we look further ahead past that, then we'll look for our public kickoff to this process in January. So that's kind of where we're headed. Again, Stephanie will give you much more detail, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to her. This is Stephanie Falkers from SRF, and just heads up, you probably all noticed, but for these meetings, we will be videotaping them because our plan is to then get these meetings up on the website or our public engagement platform so that folks can go back if they are interested in how the process started. They can get caught up on how this was going. So,
Is that perfect? Thanks, Amy. So yeah, again, my name is Stephanie Falkers with SRF Consulting Group. It's really exciting to be here in River Falls tonight and talk to you guys about our planning process. So I do have a little agenda laid out for us, but this can be as informal as you want it to be. So feel free to interrupt me, ask me questions as I go through. I'll appreciate that to have a break, maybe take a sip of coffee, things like that. But this is obviously my time to get to know all of you, so I'm hoping we can go around and do some quick introductions. Then we'll go through what the planning process is that we're about to start in terms of the 3 plans that we are putting together here throughout this process. We'll talk a little bit about who's involved, including what your role is in this overall grant process, but then how we're engaging other groups in the process as well. And then I want to spend a little time putting you to work, thinking about some existing strengths and weaknesses. There's no right or wrong answers here, but it's just our opportunity to kind of roll up our sleeves together and get thinking about the outdoor recreation system within River Falls. And then we will close with next steps. So from an introduction standpoint, if we could just go around and give me your name, how long you've been on the advisory committee, and then I'd like to know what your favorite park, facility, or recreation element is within River Falls. Just, what do you enjoy doing while you're on the committee, things like that. So maybe if we can start with Brandon.
I'm Brandon Dobberton. To be honest, I'm not really positive. Has it been, I was gonna say 6+ years,
More
I
than
think.
6, 'cause I've been here 6 and you were here.
Okay, yeah, I know it's been a while. But after a while, I just kinda get used to it.
Yep.
And I guess I would have to say my favorite park is my home park of Highview Meadows. That's the development I live in. Just because it's close and I got to watch it develop and grow. So that's me.
Very cool.
My name is Patricia LaRue. I've been on the park, the reason I know he's been here longer than 6 is I've been on for 6 years plus. So, let's see, I really like Lake George. I liked Lake Louise because it was quieter, but that's gone now. So Lake George, because I love watching the turtles sunbathing and the swans in the spring as it's coming, the swans come and that kind of stuff. So that's my favorite place.
Excellent.
I'm Brenda Galkey. I've been on the Park Advisory Board now for 30 years. My favorite park is Glen Park, and if you happen to know me, you would know why, but I was literally born and raised right next door to Glen Park. The bridge sits there in my mother's property, and it's still in the family and all that kind of stuff. I truly enjoy all of our parks and participating in different activities in all of them, but walking and hiking and checking out the rivers are always the best.
Excellent. Sean?
I'm City Council Member Sean Downing, and I've been on the council, I've been elected 3 times. Part of why I really enjoy being on the Park Advisory Board is to develop our city parks based on what the people who live in our city want to see them become. And for me, I think my favorite park is the Sanctus because it's got the most wide open space and it's more outdoorsy. That's what it's deemed as too.
Sure. Excellent.
My name is Matt Jankort. I've only been on the park board for 1 year, so I'm kind of a newcomer, and a fairly newcomer to River Falls. I've been here with my family maybe for 3-4 years now. So my favorite park is, I really enjoy the White Pathway and Lake George, but I do really enjoy Glen Park and the lower trails in the river and kind of pickleball courts. And so Glen Park is my favorite.
Cindy, I'm interested in what your answer to that last question is. Put you on the spot.
They're all of them, but I guess because I spend the majority of my, well, I shouldn't say, I spend a lot of time in Hoffman Park, but the majority of time in Glen Park, and I love it when it is so active and you drive past there and it is so active, and so when September comes and the kids all go back to school and you see just one mom and one kid on the playground, it tears my heart apart, so.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, well, we'll keep going, and so, again, this is our kickoff, and as Amy mentioned, you are the first steering committee out of the 3 that we have that we're meeting with, so you're kind of my first stop at this point, but what is the process that we're starting here? And I think you may be aware of what's going on here in terms of the 3 plans that we're updating. But we have the comprehensive plan, the bike and pedestrian plan, and the outdoor recreation plan. 3 big planning processes that we're going to tackle all at once. And there's some great efficiencies in that process of doing them all at the same time, but it's also a big undertaking in terms of updating these 3 important plans. So I'll go through kind of a little high-level detail of what each of them are so you can understand how they're going to kind of play together, but of course we'll dive a little bit deeper into the outdoor recreation plan specifically, since that's the one that you will all have the most involvement in throughout this process. But of course we'd love you to be a part of the process when it comes to the others as well. So from a comprehensive plan standpoint, this is our overarching document for all of River Falls. It's our guide to physical, social, and economic development within the community. The comprehensive plan is kind of a higher level document that's setting our goals and policies for the next 20 years. So when we're thinking about River Falls in 2041, who do we want to be, and how are we going to make decisions to reach that vision and goal in the next 20 years. This plan does include a lot of different topics, as it is that overarching plan for the entirety of the city. So it's talking about things like housing, transportation, utilities, our recreation system, things like that. This plan itself, again, does stay a little bit higher level. So we're going to have a vision that we're going to set for who we want to be as a community and what our specific goals are, what do we want to be working towards. We will have an implementation plan, but doesn't necessarily get into some specific elements that we might see that I'll talk about a little bit more when we talk about the bike and ped and outdoor recreation plans. The comprehensive plan is required by state statutes that we need to update that plan every 10 years. So the current document is a 2005 document, so it is time for us to update it. But state statutes require us to talk about 9 different elements within that planning process. So we've got everything up here: issues and opportunities, housing, transportation, community facilities and utilities, land use, ag, natural and cultural resources, economic development, intergovernmental cooperation, and implementation are the 9 required things that we need to talk about and set goals for. The one thing you might notice when you're looking at these is there isn't clearly a spot for where our parks and recreation fit. There isn't an element that is specifically parks and recreation. So we will be interweaving that into there's a couple different spots that it can fall, and so it will be included in the overall comprehensive plan, but that's another really great reason why we're doing the outdoor recreation plan in tandem, so to make sure that the recreation system is getting the attention and vision that it needs to align with the overall comprehensive plan. The bike and pedestrian plan, we do have a current plan that was in 1995 vintage. And this is a comprehensive, visionary, and action-focused approach to create a more pedestrian and bicycle-friendly community. So really looking at our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure from both a recreational standpoint and a transportation standpoint. So whether you're walking to work, biking to work, or you're just doing it from a recreational standpoint. But similar to the outdoor recreation plan, it's going to be an action-oriented document. So it will still set goals and a vision for our bike and pedestrian system, similar to the comprehensive plan when we're thinking about that goal setting. But we're going to get a little bit more specific into the implementation actions here. So instead of being all the way up here, we're going to get a level deeper where we might be specifically calling out new trail connections or maintenance activities that we might need to complete. So we will be much more specific in terms of implementation in this plan and the outdoor recreation plan. So that leads us to the third plan in the suite of things here, which is our outdoor recreation plan. So of course this is a great plan for us to make sure that we've got the recreation opportunities available to the community. As Sean was mentioning, that we have those resources out there. They're a big component of quality of life for our residents. The outdoor recreation plan, however, though, is something that has some requirements with the DNR. And it's a document that, when done correctly, makes the city eligible for some funding opportunities. So it does provide a really important aspect from that standpoint and does set some requirements that we need to meet from that standpoint. But it will guide the acquisition and development of public outdoor parks and recreation facilities, and through the DNR's requirements, ensures that plans meet requirements for state and federal grant programming. So again, when we do it in concert with the requirements as outlined by the DNR, makes us eligible for some grant funding opportunities. Also helps from a federal standpoint as well. So getting specifically into our park and recreation plan, we thought about this in a twofold aspect. We of course want to make sure that the plan is developed in compliance with those DNR requirements, which requires us to do an inventory of our existing park system, gather community input to define needs, what does our community want to see out of our recreation system, and then also completing a needs assessment. So that's what we need to do to meet DNR requirements and make sure that we're eligible for those funding opportunities. But we want to make sure that we go beyond those baseline requirements and create a plan that's specific to River Falls. So some things that we'll be looking at here is going beyond just understanding those needs. You know, do we need another basketball court, or we need more trails or things like that? We want to think about some of those longer term recreation goals. So maybe they're not short-term actions and investments that we need to make, but what are some things that we can be looking at in the longer term? What are the maintenance and operations cost and saving opportunities that we can be looking at as that's providing an efficient system as a whole? Looking at, again, those longer term needs and recommendation, and making sure that it connects with the comprehensive plan and bike and pedestrian plan. Obviously, there's a lot of synergy that happens with that bike and pedestrian plan when we think about recreation. You know, there's things that happen in tandem there, but then they also have their own spaces. And then, of course, that comprehensive plan being that overarching plan document. So when we think about why the city thought about doing these plans at the same time, there's definitely some efficiencies in doing all three in tandem, and really that comes down to a lot of the public engagement and making sure that the goals that are established within the comprehensive plan can be woven, and issues and opportunities identified in the comprehensive plan can then be woven into these other system plans, and then that we can make sure that the comprehensive plan also recognizes the implementation actions that will be defined within these plans. So that overarching document, as the Common Council is making decisions that are based on that comprehensive plan, also supports these other system plans that we've just created. So maybe I will pause there. That was a lot of information I threw out at you very quickly about three very important documents for the city's future. Are there any questions about anything that I just went over?
I think that the frustration that I run into is when we hear about these wonderful things that are gonna happen is the finances of doing it.
Yeah.
We have, as you've heard from Glen Park, yet we don't have updated playground equipment in a park.
Yeah.
We have White Pathway, and there is a bench, and literally you're sitting here, there's buckthorn right here. And when I asked Terry Kuzlik, can we get rid of it, he said, well, we don't have the money for it. So if we don't have the money to get rid of buckthorn, and we don't have money for playground equipment, but we're gonna make this big plan, it just seems like it's gonna be a lot of frustration.
Sure.
So, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yes, and I think that is a common frustration that we hear in a lot of communities, is where you're going to gather all of my input, you're going to put this plan together, and then you're just going to put it on a shelf. You know, that was a waste of time, waste of effort. That is obviously not our intent when we go through this in a couple of ways. Making sure that the implementation actions that are defined across all three plans are very specific to the engagement and activities that we hear throughout the planning process, in a way to build consensus. There are things. If we say we need X, Y, and Z, we might be coming out for a sales tax increase to fund some of those things, or we might have engaged with a certain community group or nonprofit that could help fund some of those things. But we are very conscious as well about the funding aspect when it comes to those implementation aspects. Now, we might identify things in the plan that are bigger ideas that we don't know. The timeline is going to be in question. There's a big dollar value, but there's a big idea that has a lot of community support. There's still validity in including that in the planning process, but we have to be open and honest about some of those barriers that we're going to have to overcome, especially when we think about this plan specifically makes us eligible for more funding opportunities and grant funding opportunities. So that is also something we want to keep in mind when we think about implementation, is what funding sources might we be able to tap into as well.
I'd just jump in and add that typically these are 5-year plans. The DNR wants them updated every 5 years. So it's got a shorter scope, which I think helps us to be a bit more realistic, right? So our budget, CIP, capital investment program plan, goes out 5 years. So that's really what we should be planning for. And I think, again, to your point, it's gonna help us be a bit more realistic. We need to look further ahead so that we're setting up the next 5-year plan, right, with those big ideas. But this is the first step, so.
Yeah.
How does the community get involved in, I know this isn't the comprehensive plan isn't part of the park board, but some of those bigger 20-year visions of things, I'm new to the board meetings, how does that stuff become made, how does the community have input into those ideas? Because those seem like really big community-wide thoughts and decisions.
Yes, so that's the engagement part of this process is very critical because, and I said this at our kickoff with staff, we could in this room sit down for the next couple of hours and create all 3 plans if we wanted to, right? We have enough ideas that we could say this is what we think needs to happen across all of these areas, but that's not going to be, supported. It's not inclusive of all opinions and things like that. So that's where the engagement process is really important. And we're working through a draft engagement plan right now that really focuses on 3 different engagement areas that we're collecting feedback from the public that we'll use to inform the process, and then we'll come back out again and say this is what we heard and this is where we're going with it. Give us more feedback. So that initial kickoff, as Amy mentioned, that we're planning for in January here is our opportunity to educate the public on these 3 planning processes, and the intent is to hit all 3 all at the same time so that we're being efficient and collecting as much feedback as we can. And what we'll be doing is creating engagement opportunities and informational sessions to inform people about what we're working on and collect that feedback. So initially, it's a real focus on issues and opportunities. So there's not a lot of work that, we're not presenting a lot of work at this initial stage. We want to know what experiences you have as a resident or I'm forgetting the term that you were, an area resident, is that what you said? With River Falls, whether that's having transportation issues or park, there's lots of different topics that can be covered there.
Are those meetings, those gathering sessions, are those typically here at City Council, or City Hall, and like someone has to be paying attention to come down to these kind of events, or do you try to get out into?
So for our initial phase, and of course there's a little nebulousness with COVID and what the safest practice is for us, but we have a 3-pronged approach, which is a online platform that people can participate in from, wherever. We will also have a formal kickoff event that, will take shape on what that, again, looks like. And then we also have pop-up events identified, which are us going to an event or a grocery store or something like that to interact with people on their daily path. So kind of a 3-pronged approach. Not only is this first phase super important for us for establishing that baseline of issues and opportunities, but it's all our opportunity to educate the public. And what we're really hoping is we will have a continuous online engagement platform that we're hoping we can get people latched into early in the planning process, that we can engage intermittently throughout this entire process. So it might not be, not be at the formal stage of, analyzing plan recommendations yet, but if we've got a question about, rate one thing over another, something, we've got another platform, and that would be all online from that standpoint too. But great question.
I've got another one when you're talking about online. I totally get people from the outside providing input. So for an example, we have an RV park. We did a survey of River Falls and nobody used the RV park, so we were gonna get rid of it. Well, of course, no one from River Falls is using the RV park.
Exactly.
So I get the outside community, but when it comes to decisions, when we have things where someone from Colorado is starting to have their input into what we're going to do, I don't mind I don't mind the ideas, I don't mind the input, but when the decisions are made, it will be River Falls residents making the decisions.
Yes, and so in terms of this entire process, your point is very valid. That it's not just a resident isn't the only one that spends money when we think about that economic development aspect in the community. We have our area residents that are also coming in and contributing and working here or spending their money here. So there is validity in the input that we receive from those individuals, but you have to take that also with a grain of salt. They're not, contributing to the taxes and financially, so then you've got to think about, there might be some bigger, loftier ideas that come from some of those because they want to, 5 Chipotles and they don't care about what that means. Apparently I want a burrito for dinner, but, so there's that part, and we have some tools in place that we can kind of use to navigate some of that analysis of input that we receive. Through this process, you as a steering committee and our steering committee for the comprehensive plan and the bike and ped committee will be responsible for helping us work through some of those big ideas or interesting, concepts that maybe come out. You all know River Falls way better than I do, and so using you as tools and resources to make sure that we're setting a vision and goals and implementation plan that's very specific to the community is a big part of what your role is here. When it comes to adoption, these plans will go through and be adopted by the council in order for them to be, truly, the plans that we're using to guide future decisions. So it will go through the process from that standpoint. And then it's really up to whether it's your body making recommendations, plan commission, the council taking formal action. Those things will be done should be reviewed against these planning documents to make sure that they're meeting the goals that we established through this process. Any other general comments or questions? Okay. So when we think, getting a little bit more specific into the outdoor recreation plan, I maybe should have asked at the beginning, how many of you are familiar with the plan that exists today? It is a 90s document. Couple of you? Okay.
Probably signed my name on it.
So it's still, serving that point, but as Amy mentioned, the DNR really is looking for these to be updated on a 5-year cycle to make sure that they're constantly looked at, they're really being specific to the time recreation needs change on a cyclical cycle. So, but what needs to be included in the plan, and these are really the requirements that come out of the DNR. So we need to have goals and objectives. Obviously we need to say, what is our vision for recreation in River Falls, and what are our goals and objectives that we need to set in order to achieve that overall vision. That's a big piece that's going to come from community engagement. So this initial issues and opportunities session that we will have with the public. We need to have a description of the planning region. Okay, that's pretty standard, right? We need to have a recreation supply inventory. So we will be, you guys have some great resources for us already that I have printed off the Parks and Trails map. What do we have in place today that are our existing outdoor recreation facilities? But that also includes our natural resources. So it's not necessarily just the park system as we would define it, but it's also natural recreation areas that may provide passive recreation. We also look at private outdoor recreation opportunities as well. Though they may not be available to the entire public, they are resources out there that some people have access to. So we look at kind of a broad spectrum of our inventory from that perspective. That inventory then helps us understand, here's what we have today, what do we need to plan for the future? And that gets us into a needs assessment. So based on what we're expecting for population growth and change, what do we then need from our recreation system? Not only for, to make sure that we're supporting any population growth, but also what are we hearing from the community as well? And there might be some differences there, and there very frequently are differences. Community center is maybe one thing I'd throw out that we hear in other communities. We really want a community center, but the needs assessment says that you need a population of 25,000 to, per the standards to qualify, or to say that you need a community center. So then it's working together to balance that needs assessment to really what we want to identify for River Falls. And then from that assessment, it's identifying recommendations for outdoor recreation investment through both an action program, so what are the specific things we need to do? Do we need to be converting a pickleball court to something else or things like that? Do we need to be adding new park areas? But then also making sure that we're thinking about operations and maintenance as well, because you can't think about one without the other. Not only is it we need to maintain what we have to continue to provide that resource, but we also need to be thinking about operations and maintenance with any new facilities that we might be identifying through this process. And that is just the baseline again that is required for the DNR. And what the outline of this plan is, as I mentioned, we'll want to be thinking a little bit more long-term as well, to just be forward-thinking, aligning with some of the longer-term visions of the comprehensive plan throughout this process. I just pulled a couple of things out of the inventory just for reference and to kind of get us thinking a little bit. But the National Recreation and Park Association develops standards so they look across the country, across different municipality sizes, and say, based on, from a per capita standpoint, you need to have so many parks for so many people, or so many, to make sure that you've got enough basketball courts, you need to have this many basketball courts per this many people. So we pulled the 2021 standards, just a couple things for reference here. So from a city standpoint, they say that one park is needed for every almost 2,000 residents. So based on our 2020 population here in River Falls, we need 8 parks to meet the NRPA standards.
You got that?
We're over that.
Yeah.
Well, and don't they do it by acres? I mean, you can have a little neighborhood park, but do they say how many acres per?
There's multiple ways
Okay,
of
okay.
looking at it. This is just, one factor. I've just pulled a couple quick
Okay,
tidbits.
okay,
And this one, yes, they just say a park. So,
a park,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but there is getting it, the next phase, deeper dive into that is looking at the sizes and the services, or
Right.
programming that's associated with each of them. They also have metrics for looking at the specific facilities within your park systems, the outdoor recreation components. So I just pulled a basketball court because it's the only one that isn't, or it's one of the only ones that isn't categorized by adult or youth or, things like that. One basketball court for every just over 4,000 residents. And this, when we get into the facility-specific pieces, it looks at not only whether you're a county or a city, but also by your population size, because that changes some of those needs as well. So this is that 4,000 residents is for a city with a population of under 20,000 people. And same thing, I pulled the dog park as well, one for every 11,000 residents or so 1.48 dog parks is needed. So I just wanted to throw this out, because this is it's a kind of an easy part of the analysis, but it starts us to getting to think about what really are our needs. Dog parks a few years ago, was kind of an interesting one, because they were a little contentious about whether I should be dedicating parkland to, only dog owners and things like that. But then when you see a number like 11,000 residents and what that needs are, it kind of helps to work through things as well. So obviously there'll be a lot more work that goes into that, but I just wanted to kind of throw out that.
So is that just city basketball courts, just to say? Because I'm pretty sure we've put together the schools and actually probably included the university on past plans. But
So there's a couple different ways that we can look at this, and usually when there is city facilities, there is publicly available, and now that, there's caveats that come to, the school if it's during recess or whatever, they're maybe not available, but, so taking that into account, and then there's also the private aspect of things as well. So a lot of times we'll look at those 3 categories together, think about it in total, because we can't, if we we said, yes, we have 4 basketball courts, but only one of them is in, you know, a city facility, then we're really not meeting that piece, because we could maybe only say that we've got 1.5, you know, because the others are on school property and one's a private facility or something like that. So, yeah.
And the ones we have are mostly half in the park, so I'm like, I don't know, we have it.
And I think part of what you're getting at is,
Yeah.
are they functional for all of our
Right.
community, and are they connected? Because we have different parts of our city that aren't well connected.
Yes, yep, and this is the base level of analysis that's required within the DNR requirements, and actually you can, to meet the requirements, you could do your analysis totally based on community input and not use these metrics at all if you decided to go that way. But they're just the 2 baseline. You can also dive deeper into some other metrics and scoring, you know, as well as we go through and kind of seeing what feels right. Okay. So how will the plan be used? It creates, again, that action plan. What are the implementation actions that we need to be making progress on to meet our goals? And this is, again, an opportunity for those that are involved in the outdoor recreation plan to say, you know, hey, city, these are the things that we want to see to meet your goals. So having it be an adopted plan, it's really putting out there that this is where we want to be headed as a community regarding our recreation. It also is going to help direct operations and maintenance, at least some considerations on whether it's policies or funding needs, make sure that we are maintaining operations and the maintenance of our facilities to maintain the recreation opportunities at a level that is acceptable for River Falls. And then again, also makes us eligible for those funding programs. Now, I say the word eligible because it makes us eligible. It doesn't mean that the funding sources, there's still work that has to be done to go after some of that funding, but it's one initial step to make sure that we can go after those things. I won't get into this deep, but this looks at our timeline for the entirety of the planning process, and really for the park and or the outdoor recreation plan and bike and pedestrian plan. We're looking at about a 12-month process. We're going to be working together for about a year, and that really is going to allow us to explore issues and opportunities. What are the goals that we have? Then get into the nerdy planning analysis of running that assessment, understanding where we want to be going in our comprehensive plan, plan elements and things like that, and then setting those implementation actions and plan at the end. These plans will finish before the comprehensive plan, and that is very intentional. What the overall process looks at here is, from a comprehensive plan standpoint, we want to be thinking about that city vision and overall goals first, because again, that is our umbrella document. Then we want to be looking at the goals and policies for these 2 system plans to make sure that they are connecting with these overall goals that we've set for the comprehensive plan. And it allows us to kind of check those comprehensive plan goals to make sure that they're directing us in the way that we want to go. Then completing these plans first allows us to set those implementation actions that are specific to the systems that we're talking about, and make sure that the comprehensive plan then emphasizes the implementation of these plans that we just laid out. So these plans will be completed, and then we will go through and finish the comprehensive plan. So that'll lag on a little bit longer than a year as well. Who was involved in the planning process? And this is looking at things as a whole. I kind of already talked about the 3 different committees. So there's 2 other committees that will be leading the charge for the other 2 planning efforts, playing the same role as you guys will be with the outdoor recreation plan. Obviously, the first one, though, our residents and stakeholders are a critical component to this process. Again, we could come up with the outdoor recreation plan here tonight and be done with it, but really we need to make sure that we're getting as much input as we can throughout the process from those residents and stakeholders. That helps us to build consensus again if we have to come out for, it's the city wants to have a sales tax increase to fund X, Y, and Z things, people can relate back to being a part of this process. Obviously, our commissions and councils and departments are also involved in this process as well. As Amy mentioned, we had our kickoff with our city departments on the 5th, so a couple Fridays ago. The department staff they know these systems much better than anybody else. They're working with the existing policies and understanding, so they're really an invaluable resource to us, and they're gonna be lead implementers of these planning processes as well. So making sure that we're continually engaging with departments is really critical to this process. And then, of course, the consultant team. And we are here to facilitate this process. We don't come with any preconceived ideas. We've been through this process in other areas. We can bring ideas that have worked or not worked in other areas, but we're really here to just work with you as a community to help you achieve your goal. This gets into our public engagement opportunities. I won't dive deep into here, but it kind of gets at what I had alluded to in terms of our three phases that we're looking at. From an ongoing standpoint, here I didn't update Bang the Table, dang it. Our online engagement platform, which is a company called Bang the Table, but we're referring to it as our online engagement platform. That will be an available resource throughout the entirety of the planning process. It's a great tool because it's something that we can get information out to a large group of people all at once. Hopefully they continue to be engaged throughout the process, and it also allows the community to collaborate with each other as they're engaging on different topics in the planning process. We have our steering committees. That 7 meetings is specifically referenced to the comprehensive plan, but we'll meet with you various times throughout this planning process. We have, again, those 3 phases. Again, first, issues and opportunities. What do we want to be working towards? What are the experiences that you're having within the community? We'll come back for our phase 2 with plan recommendations. So we've heard what your issues and opportunities are. We've established some goals, and this is the direction that we think we're going to be heading in our different systems. Did we hear you right? Are these the right goals? Do these respond well? And do you like the direction that we're heading? Are we heading in the right direction? Did we miss anything? That's really there. And then draft plan, as we are wrapping up the 3 planning processes, we want to have an opportunity, again, to say, here's everything together. Again, did we hear you right before it goes through the adoption process, which is, again, another public hearing is required, so there is more public input opportunity. At that standpoint, but the bike ped plan and the outdoor rec plan also have their own specific engagement. So there will be some walking, biking tours with the bike and ped plan, and then we will have planned some pop-up events specifically for this plan, with the intent being, going out and being, in a park, attending some kind of recreation event where we can engage on this process as well. I'll skip over that. I think we've had enough of that. So I maybe pause there again. I've gone through, again, a lot of information, and I appreciate your patience. Any other questions on the planning process, what you're being asked to do, all of those good things? Amy, did I miss anything? Okay.
I have something. We have a really rare opportunity here. We have a young man with us. What's your name? Noah. Noah, is there a special park that you'd like to go to? I'm kind of putting you on the spot. And do you ride your bike places, or do you feel comfortable riding your bike?
I ride my bike some places.
Okay. Well, if you think of a park that you like in particular, let us know, because you're really kind of our focus on the Park and Rec, is you guys, so. Okay, that's we rarely have a young person.
Excellent. So, and this can be as deep or as quick as we want, but I wanted to just turn the floor over to you and allow me to learn from those of you that are representing us in terms of our advisory board. So when we're thinking about strengths and weaknesses of our existing system, and this is really going to help us as we're planning for this initial phase of engagement. You're gonna help us kind of think about what we want to be asking the public. So when you think about existing recreation, parks and recreation within the community, what are some existing strengths? What are weaknesses? Where you know, buckthorn or I can't remember the other thing you had mentioned, but and then what are some of the barriers or hurdles that we might experience? So why haven't we, you know, whether it's funding for the removal of buckthorn or things like that. So it's meant to be open, but I want to know from you, what are some things that you want to make sure that we know as the consultant team as we're kicking off this process and thinking about the existing recreation system?
Well, I think one of our huge strengths is we have support from the community. We have an engaged community. They don't, people who recreate here, and live here and recreate here, don't necessarily spend their weekends heading out somewhere else. We have pickleball, we have baseball, we have a huge baseball field. We've got golf, disc golf, we've got walking for people who maybe aren't as active. We've got bike trails. We've got a huge off-road, I'm talking too much. Off-road bike packing. They can, on a weekend, will bring 2,000 people in. And they're here. We just need to get them from north of town into town, you know, instead of just coming in north and then heading back out toward the highway. The same with the big baseball. It's right on the highway. It's like, no, come this way, come this way. But I mean, really, well, probably a lot because we have the university, but as an older person myself,
Yeah.
I don't go play basketball and I don't go swimming, but it is nice to have the walking paths and something really nice to look at, not just walking down the streets. But I do think we have huge support within the community to do something.
And that works in our strength also, because sometimes people come to us with an idea, and we're like looking at them going, nice idea, yeah, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe we can find some land for it, but we have no money to put into it. And there's been numerous groups that have then went out and done their own fundraising to create
Well, like
something,
the
so.
skate park people, they're really, well, the disc golf, they did their own thing.
Right.
Pickleball did their own thing. The off-road bicyclists did their own thing. It's just the skateboarders, you know, we're kind of like, you gotta help us out here. You know, we're not saying no to you, but, you know, we can't just hand over, you know, a $200,000 skateboard
Right.
park.
Yeah, yeah. What else? That can't be it.
Well, I think we hinted on it a little bit earlier too, was when you talk about functionality and connectives, you know, those middle pieces, whether it's benches, bathrooms, our multimodal trails, sidewalks, interconnected pieces that make parks fully realized and utilized. There are parts of the city, such as Sterling Ponds though, however, that can't simply be connected and they need to be looked at as a separate piece as a whole. And because of that, they have different needs that can't just be served by just being, because they can't be connected the same way. So they need more attention in that respect.
So are we talking about weaknesses too?
Mhm.
Yeah. I was part of the Kinney Corridor Plan, and within that, it was mentioned, like Sean just said, we were sent out to kind of talk to people. And I was down at the bottom of Glen Park, and I saw a man sitting on the ground with his 2-year-old. And he was carrying her, and he couldn't go any further, because that's pretty steep. And I said, what was that, 3 years ago, can we have a park bench? Just a bench, so someone can sit down and not have to sit on the ground.
Sure.
And especially if you're an older person. Today, there is not a park bench. And now, how hard is that to put a park bench there? And another one that's harder is if you're walking with children or you're an older person on the far side of the trail on Lake George, and you have to go to the bathroom, or you need a drink of water, where are you supposed to go? You can't go to Mel's. You can't take your 4-year-old into Mel's to go to the bathroom. So, yeah, But I do know that's more expensive than a park bench, but I'm sitting there, I'm like going, right, 3 years later, we don't have a park bench and people still are trying to carry people up that hill. Yeah, garbage cans. Yeah.
The lack thereof.
Well, and then that falls into the maintenance, who's gonna dump it?
Yeah.
Right,
So,
right.
I think the river is a great existing strength of recreation opportunities. I mean, I think it's a draw to people to explore River Falls and recreate in this area.
One of the things that we haven't talked about much tonight is communication. And communicating those needs for the future is something that I don't think most communities do well to begin with. So if we could work on communication as part of that.
Just kind of side related, like communication for me, you know, when you talk about a lot of public social media stuff and when you're, like, I personally love to be involved, but I work at a school and I'm on the computer throughout the day and I just really don't want to do social media and stay connected that way. So for me, it's harder to, I tend to leave all that out. So if it's relying heavily on social media connectedness, like I miss that stuff. So I like when there's things at the library and things, opportunities to get involved that way. And we all drive by the library, generally see signs, advertising things. So.
Yep, and we are, the one benefit for me out of this whole multi-year global pandemic is what it's done for public engagement, at least in the industry that I work in, because it's caused us to think more inclusive of what all of the needs and the way that people want to engage. We were forced to do that. In March of 2020, all of a sudden we were, caught, how in the heck are, we can't invite people into City Hall anymore, so we went to this online platform. Now that we're kind of back in this hybrid piece, we need to be thinking about what all of those opportunities are, because there are people that are zoomed out. They're over engaged in some of those things, so thinking about a variety of opportunities. So that is another role for you as the advisory committee or the steering committee for this plan is let us know if there's something different that we could be doing or a group that we're engaging. We want to know those things. I have ideas, Amy has ideas, but that doesn't mean that that's all that's out there as well.
One of the things that I know I personally really enjoy, and I hear a lot of confidence from our community, is those pictures on our Glen Park Pavilion of our history of our city. And we need to look for other opportunities, other parts of our parks where we can bring that out, because it gives people the opportunity to be social and enjoy the growth in our community for what it is.
Excellent.
Well, and that, it's not part of the park board. One of the things I'm just shocked at is River Falls does not have a museum. I can't believe something our size with our history doesn't have a museum.
And of course, this is just our kickoff, so this is not the be-all, end-all. But anything else, any ideas, concepts, things that,
I mean, I think there's lots of strengths, the variety of facilities that Patricia said. I think we have great green space in this town, opportunities to, get out in nature very easily. But I wonder if sometimes a weakness, and then maybe it's just city bureaucracy. The school district right now is talking about, they have a Dream Big event where they're planning for the development of their school forest that's been kind of landlocked for a long time. So, lots of vision, passion, just really digging in. And it seems like you have a chance to get involved and a lot of it could be long term, right? But there's building up the passions of the community, engaging them, and maybe there's members of the community that are involved in separate groups that can bring outside funding or talent or things to these projects. So sometimes it seems maybe like some of the city things are they get mentioned or they get developed, but it's like how can they get action implemented? And I know that funding is difficult, but I don't know if it's just, hey, skate parks are really expensive, go for it. Is there an effort to help in those regards? So maybe there's people who would get involved and stuff. but-
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, and that's a really hard, kind of balance of things, and just, if you think about, some of your zoning components and complaining about a neighbor not, cleaning up their trash, or the fact that they've got 4 vehicles in their front yard that don't run and they're just sitting there as lawn ornaments. There's no, there's not somebody that's driving around looking for those things. It takes, you calling the city for then action to happen. And I'm not saying that that's the only way that action should occur, but the hope for me in these processes is that we've, through engagement, have fostered a sense of, passion for the future of River Falls, and I'm forgetting your name, but for, our younger generations.
No, we all know.
To want to see these things and ask others and come to council and say, you committed to doing these things, where is this? Or, I've got this funding source, how can we partner together to really foster that relationship and make this city hall not a scary place for people to come and be civically engaged. That's a tall task, but it's something that can happen through this planning process.
So I'm assuming the Kinney Corridor Plan will be melded
Yes.
into this.
Exactly, yep. Kinney Corridor, any other planning efforts, like I mentioned, the bike ped and current outdoor, those are 90s plans, but there's still things in there that, show our history or have guided us where we're at. The 2005 comprehensive plan, we're still using it today. Those are all things that will be woven in and making sure that we're building off of those efforts as well. So, okay. I think this is my last slide. What happens next? So we've got your committee kickoff, as Amy mentioned. In December, we're kicking off the Comprehensive Plan Committee and the Bike Ped Committee. But really, our team is doing that data collection piece. And so we've been working with staff to make sure that we've got access to GIS files and all of the demographic information that we can pull so that we can set that foundation of who we're planning for. What is that base case for us to then build upon? So we're becoming River Falls experts here over the next month or so as we prep then for our external kickoff in January. And that is really where we're gonna hit the trails and make sure and really kick off this planning process. The intent is to make sure that throughout the year that we're not losing momentum, so we're keeping people engaged, but we're also not overcommitting. So there will be some breathing room in between engagement activities so that we're not, tiring people out and by the end they don't care about the comprehensive plan anymore because we've just way overcommitted them and their time. So my email is up there if you have any questions. You will meet other parts of our planning team throughout this process as well, but we're really excited to get to know all of you a little bit more and set our vision moving forward across these three plans. So thank you so much for the time this evening.
You know,
Yeah, thank
when the plans are finalized, do they go to city council and then need to be approved by, I'm just curious, because I don't know a lot about how this works, if, like on the comprehensive plan, or if there was a group that was either really powerful in their persuasion, interest in the direction in one way, can they really steer this thing, and then is there an opportunity at the end where people have a voice of that's not a good vision, or, you know what I mean?
Yes. So from a true adoption process, specifically the comprehensive plan has to be adopted through a public hearing.
Okay.
So there is, and it's my job to make sure that there aren't those voices that are over-directing this process. And like I mentioned, I need your help as well when we're developing these plans to make sure that we're thinking about the community as a whole. But there is a public opportunity at that point as the plan is being adopted to make sure that there aren't any glaring, red flags or things like that. And of course, with any process, we're not going to be able to, meet everybody's desires. It's just, we have to think, about the community as a whole. So there could be things, who knows, but yeah. This plan does also get some review with the DNR, as well. So, the plan that has the most autonomy is the bike and ped plan. That can be whatever it wants to be. There aren't any state organizations that have grips on it like the other two.
Is that steering committee all set?
Yes. Yep.
We don't want to forget that St. Croix County for sure had a bike plan. Did Pierce also? And she got in those two? I don't,
I can't remember, I don't think Pierce has one.
I don't
St. Croix just updated theirs a couple of years ago, so we've got that.
Anybody have any more questions? Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Okay, so that was it. Just a reminder to everybody that we are going to be meeting with the Historical Preservation Commission next month on the 8th.
which
It
is a
start-
week before.
And it starts at 5:30
Correct.
instead of 5:15. And is it still here, right?
At this point.
Okay, and there will be dinner served, so.
Well, we don't know about that.
Oh.
It says there will, but doesn't.
So,
We gotta get that one cleared.
We'll see.
okay. Well,
I'll let you know.
Okay. So is there any other business? If not, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, we are adjourned.